She thought she knew the man she married. But on what should have been the happiest night of her life, Sarah Mitchell discovered a blinking red light hidden behind a vase in their honeymoon suite. What was recorded on that device would shatter everything she believed about love, trust, and the man who promised to cherish her forever. This is her story. Marriage is supposed to be built on honesty. Two people standing before God, family, and friends, vowing to protect each other's hearts. But what happens when the foundation cracks before the honeymoon even begins? What happens when the person sleeping beside you has been keeping secrets that could destroy you both? Sarah Mitchell learned the answer to that question on November 12, 2023, in a hotel room in Charleston, South Carolina. And what she discovered that night would haunt her in ways she never imagined. This isn't a thriller. This isn't fiction. This is what happened when one woman's intuition led her to uncover a truth that was never meant to see the light of day. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Sarah Mitchell was 32 years old when she met David Thompson at a community fundraiser in Richmond, Virginia. She had spent most of her 20s focused on building her career as an elementary school teacher, watching her friends get married one by one while she wondered if real love would ever find her. She wasn't desperate, but she was tired of shallow connections and empty promises. David seemed different from the start. He was 35, a financial consultant with a calm demeanor and a smile that made her feel safe. He didn't rush her. He listened when she talked about her students, her dreams of traveling to Ireland someday, and her complicated relationship with her mother, who had passed away 3 years earlier. Their first date lasted 6 hours. They talked about everything: childhood memories, fears about the future, what kind of parents they wanted to be someday. Sarah remembers thinking that night, walking back to her car under the streetlights, that maybe this was what everyone had been talking about. That feeling of coming home to someone you barely knew. They dated for 18 months before David proposed. It wasn't extravagant. He took her to the park where they'd had their first picnic, got down on one knee, and said the words she'd been waiting to hear. She said yes without hesitation. Her father cried when she told him. Her best friend Maya screamed so loud over the phone that Sarah had to hold the receiver away from her ear. Everything felt right. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. But there were small things. Moments that Sarah brushed aside because she didn't want to be that woman. The one who looked for problems where there were none. David was protective of his phone. He never left it lying around, always kept it face down, always took it with him even when he went to the bathroom. When she asked about his past relationships, he gave vague answers, just didn't work out. We wanted different things, nothing dramatic. He had a way of redirecting conversations, turning the focus back on her, making her feel like she was overthinking. And maybe she was. Maybe this was just what happened when you'd been hurt before, when you'd learned that people could smile to your face and lie without flinching. So, Sarah chose trust. She chose to believe that David's privacy was just his personality, not a red flag. She chose to believe that his past didn't matter because their future was what counted. The wedding planning was stressful but joyful. Sarah wanted something intimate, but David's family was large and traditional, so they compromised on 150 guests. She spent months picking out flowers, tasting cakes, arguing with the caterer about menu options. David seemed distant during most of it, claiming work stress, but he showed up when it mattered. He held her hand during the rehearsal dinner and told her father he would spend the rest of his life making her happy. On November 11, 2023, they got married in a small chapel outside of Richmond. The ceremony was beautiful. Sarah wore her grandmother's veil and carried white roses. David's voice shook when he said his vows. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears streaming down his face. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly how she dreamed it would be. The reception ended around 11 that night. Sarah and David drove to a boutique hotel in Charleston where they'd booked the honeymoon suite for 3 nights before flying to Cancun for their actual honeymoon. The room was stunning. Exposed brick walls, a king-sized bed with white linens, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. There were rose petals scattered across the bed, and a bottle of champagne waiting on ice. Sarah kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch, laughing with exhaustion. David kissed her forehead and said he needed to make a quick phone call about work. She didn't think much of it. He stepped out into the hallway, and she heard his voice through the door, low and tense, but she couldn't make out the words. She assumed it was his boss. David had mentioned a big client meeting scheduled for the week they'd be gone. She started unpacking their overnight bags, humming the song they'd danced to at the reception. That's when she noticed the vase. It was sitting on the dresser near the window, filled with fake sunflowers. Something about it seemed off. The angle was strange, tilted slightly toward the bed. Sarah walked over and adjusted it, and that's when she saw it. A small black device, no bigger than a USB drive, tucked behind the flowers. At first, she thought it was part of the hotel's decor. Maybe a sensor for the lights or air conditioning. But then she saw the tiny lens, and the blinking red dot. Her stomach dropped. She picked it up carefully, her hands trembling. It was still warm, still recording. Sarah's mind raced. Was this the hotel? Some kind of surveillance. But why would they put a camera in a guest room? Unless it wasn't the hotel. Unless someone else had placed it there. Her chest tightened. She looked toward the door, suddenly aware that David was still outside, still on the phone. How long had he been gone? 10 minutes? 15? She sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the device in her palm. There was a small port on the side. She grabbed her phone and searched for the model number printed on the back. It was a Wi-Fi-enabled spy camera, the kind you could monitor remotely from an app. The kind people use to catch cheating spouses or keep an eye on their homes. Sarah's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. She connected the device to her phone using the instructions she found online. It took 3 tries before it paired. A folder appeared on her screen, video files, dozens of them. Her hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped the phone. The first video was dated 3 days earlier, November 8th. 2 days before the wedding. She pressed play. The footage was grainy but clear enough. It showed their honeymoon suite, the same room she was sitting in now, empty except for housekeeping staff preparing it for guests. Nothing unusual. Sarah fast-forwarded. The next video was dated November 9th, late afternoon. The camera angle captured most of the room, the bed, the couch, the door, and then someone entered. David. Sarah's breath caught. He was alone, carrying a duffel bag. He looked around, checked the windows, then walked directly to the dresser. He pulled out the camera, the same one she was holding now, and positioned it carefully behind the vase. He adjusted the angle twice, checking his phone to make sure the view was right. Then he left. Sarah's mind went blank. Why would David plant a camera in their honeymoon suite? What was he trying to record? She felt sick. Was he planning to film them? Was this some twisted fantasy she didn't know about? She scrolled through more files. There were several videos from earlier that same day, November 9th, but from a different location, a living room, somewhere unfamiliar. Sarah pressed play on one of them. The footage showed David sitting on a couch, but he wasn't alone. There was a woman next to him. She was young, maybe late 20s, with dark hair and red eyes like she'd been crying. Sarah turned up the volume. The woman's voice came through, shaky and desperate. You can't just walk away from this, David. You can't pretend like nothing happened. David's face was cold, expressionless. I'm getting married, Rachel. This is over. It's been over. The woman, Rachel, stood up, pacing. Over. You told me you loved me. You told me we'd figure it out together. And now you're marrying someone else like I'm nothing. David sighed, rubbing his temples. I never promised you anything. You knew what this was. Rachel started crying harder. I'm pregnant, David. The room went silent. Sarah's stomach twisted into knots. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, drowning out everything else. David's face didn't change. He stared at Rachel for a long moment, then spoke quietly, almost gently. That's not my problem. Rachel's face crumpled. She screamed at him, called him a coward, a liar, every name Sarah had ever heard. David didn't react. He just sat there, waiting for her to finish. When she finally collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing, he leaned forward. If you try to ruin my wedding, I'll make sure you regret it. Do you understand me? I have evidence of everything. Every text, every voicemail. I'll destroy you." The video cut off. Sarah sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. Her husband, the man she'd just vowed to spend her life with, had threatened another woman, a pregnant woman, a woman he'd apparently been involved with while they were engaged. She felt like she couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. She scrolled frantically through the rest of the files. There were more videos from the living room. Arguments, Rachel begging, David cold and detached. And then there was one more, dated November 10th, the day of the wedding. Sarah almost didn't want to watch it, but she had to know. The footage showed the same living room, but this time David was alone, speaking on the phone. His voice was calm, businesslike. "Yeah, I set it up. It's recording everything. If she finds out about Rachel, I need proof that I didn't do anything wrong. Proof that I'm the victim here." A pause. He listened to whoever was on the other end. "No, Sarah doesn't know, and she won't. Rachel's not stupid enough to show up. And even if she does, I'll handle it." Another pause. "Look, I love Sarah. I do. But I'm not losing everything I've built because of one mistake. This is insurance. That's all." The video ended. Sarah dropped the phone onto the bed. If this story has your heart racing, comment, "I'm still watching." Let's see who's truly following till the end. David came back into the room a few minutes later, smiling. "Sorry about that. Work emergency." Sarah didn't respond. She was sitting on the bed, still in her wedding dress, staring at the floor. He noticed immediately. "Hey, what's wrong?" She looked up at him, her face wet with tears. She held up the camera. David's expression changed. The smile vanished. His eyes went wide, then narrowed. "Where did you find that?" "Behind the vase. Where you put it." For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, his jaw tight, his hands clenched at his sides. Then he exhaled slowly and sat down in the chair across from her. "Okay, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been lying to me? That you got another woman pregnant while we were engaged? That you planted a camera to record us without my knowledge?" David flinched. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, David? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I just married a stranger." He ran his hands through his hair, his face pale. "Rachel is my ex. We broke up 2 years ago, but she never let it go. She kept calling, showing up at my apartment, trying to get back together. I blocked her, changed my number, everything. But she found out about you, about the wedding. She started threatening me, said she'd tell you lies, ruin everything." Sarah's voice was ice cold. "So you slept with her?" David looked away. "It was one time, last summer. I was drunk. I was stressed about work. It didn't mean anything. And the baby?" He shook his head. "I don't even know if it's real. She's lied before. She's desperate. She'll say anything to keep me in her life." Sarah felt like she was watching someone else's life fall apart, not her own. "And the camera? Why would you record us?" "I wasn't trying to record us. I was trying to protect myself. Rachel threatened to come here, to the hotel, to make a scene. I wanted proof that nothing happened, that I didn't do anything wrong. I thought if she showed up and I had footage, I could prove she was harassing me." Sarah stared at him, disbelief washing over her. "You thought the solution was to spy on me? On our honeymoon?" David leaned forward, his voice pleading. "I panicked. Okay? I didn't know what else to do. I love you, Sarah. I didn't want to lose you over something that meant nothing. But you did lose me." His face crumpled. "Don't say that. Please. We can fix this." Sarah stood up, her whole body shaking. "There's nothing to fix. You lied to me. You cheated on me. You manipulated me. And then you violated my privacy because you were too much of a coward to tell me the truth." David stood too, reaching for her, but she stepped back. "I'm leaving." "No, Sarah. Please. We just got married. We can work through this." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I don't even know who you are." Sarah left the hotel that night still wearing her wedding dress. She called Maya, who picked her up within 20 minutes, no questions asked. They drove back to Richmond in silence, Sarah staring out the window at the dark highway, her mind numb. The next few days were a blur. Sarah stayed at Maya's apartment, barely eating, barely sleeping. David called and texted constantly, begging her to come home, to talk, to give him a chance to explain. She didn't respond. A week later, she met with a lawyer. The conversation was short and painful. Annulment. That's what she wanted. The marriage had lasted less than 24 hours. It could be undone. David didn't contest it. Maybe he knew there was no point. Maybe he was relieved. Sarah didn't care anymore. 2 weeks after the wedding, Sarah got a message from an unknown number. It was Rachel. "I'm sorry for everything. I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to. But I thought you should know the truth. David didn't just cheat on you once. It was going on for months. He told me you didn't understand him, that he was only with you because his family liked you. He said he was going to leave you after the wedding, take the gifts and the money, and start over with me. But then I got pregnant, and he panicked. I don't know if that helps or makes it worse. I just thought you deserved to know." Sarah read the message 3 times, then deleted it. She didn't need to know more. She'd already seen enough. The annulment was finalized on December 30th, 2023. Sarah spent New Year's Eve alone in her apartment, drinking tea and watching old movies. It wasn't the life she'd imagined 6 months ago. It wasn't the happy ending she'd dreamed about. But it was honest, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. 6 months later, Sarah was sitting in her classroom after school, grading papers, when she got a text from her father. "Just wanted to check in. How are you doing, sweetheart?" She smiled and typed back, "I'm okay, Dad, really." And she meant it. The truth was, the past 6 months had been the hardest of her life. Harder than losing her mother. Harder than anything she'd ever faced. There were days when she couldn't get out of bed, when the weight of what David had done felt too heavy to carry. But there were also days when she felt lighter, freer, like she'd been released from something she didn't even know was holding her down. She'd started seeing a therapist, talking about trust, betrayal, how to rebuild a sense of safety in the world. It was slow, painful work, but it was helping. She'd also reconnected with old friends, people she'd lost touch with during her relationship with David. She realized how much of herself she'd given up trying to make him happy, trying to be the woman he wanted her to be. Now, she was learning to be herself again. The camera was still in her possession. She'd thought about throwing it away 100 times, but something stopped her. Maybe it was a reminder. Maybe it was proof. Proof that she'd trusted her instincts when it mattered most. Proof that she'd walked away when staying would have destroyed her. One night, Sarah was scrolling through social media and saw that Rachel had given birth to a baby boy. The post was public, and there was no mention of David. Just a photo of Rachel holding her son, smiling tiredly at the camera. Sarah stared at the photo for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Anger, sadness, pity, but also something else, gratitude. Gratitude that she'd found out the truth before it was too late. Gratitude that she'd chosen herself, even when it hurt. She commented on the post, "Congratulations. He's beautiful." Rachel replied an hour later, "Thank you. That means more than you know." They never spoke again after that, but Sarah felt a strange sense of closure. This wasn't the ending she'd wanted, but maybe it was the one she needed. So let me ask you this. If you were Sarah, what would you have done? Would you have confronted David that night? Or would you have tried to work through it? Do you think people can change? Or are some betrayals too deep to forgive? And what about Rachel? Was she a victim? Or was she just as guilty? These are questions Sarah still asks herself sometimes. There's no easy answer. No clear right or wrong. Just choices. And consequences. And the courage to face both. Sarah is 33 now. She's still teaching, still living in Richmond, still healing. She hasn't dated anyone since David. She's not sure if she's ready, or if she'll ever be ready to trust someone like that again. But she's learning to be okay with that. Learning that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. learning that the most important relationship she'll ever have is the one with herself. On what should have been her first anniversary, Sarah took the camera and buried it in her backyard. She didn't say a prayer or make a ceremony out of it. She just dug a hole, dropped it in, and covered it with dirt. It felt good, like she was finally letting go of something that had been weighing her down for too long. And when she walked back inside, she felt lighter, freer, ready to start over. Because that's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't have to define you. It can break you, yes. It can shake everything you thought you knew about love and trust and faith. But it can also teach you. It can show you your own strength, your own resilience, your own worth. Sarah learned that the hard way, and if you take anything from her story, let it be this. Trust your instincts, protect your peace, and never, ever settle for someone who makes you question your own reality. Because you deserve better. You deserve the truth, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. If this story moved you, leave a comment below. Tell us what you think. Tell us your own story, if you feel ready to share it. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone who's struggling with trust or betrayal or the courage to walk away, send this to them. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for watching. And remember, your story isn't over yet. Not by a long shot.